Yes, we know some of what works, but we really don't have a strong enough understanding of what works for different populations in different contexts around the world. Much of the work that ICRW and others have done over the past couple of decades on child marriage really comes from South Asia or Ethiopia, where the context regarding child marriage is very different, right? Parents are often the ones who are making the decision to marry their girl off, to take her out of school, and very often the girl doesn't even know the man that she's being forced to marry. The situation is the same in many contexts, but very different in others. So over the past year, we have put out some results from recent studies that we conducted in places in sub-Saharan Africa where we really haven't had that much of an understanding about child marriage and what's driving it. Very recently, we put out a report funded by the Packard Foundation looking at child marriage in Kenya and Zambia. And there we found very strongly the two drivers, the precursors of child marriage were early pregnancy and school dropout. So unlike many settings where we have evidence around child marriage, sex takes place before marriage. And pregnancy often results. Why? Because girls and boys don't have an understanding that sex can actually lead to pregnancy. And once they become pregnant in these communities, they have no option but to marry. And they have no option but to drop out of school. Or if they're already out of school, they have no option to return to school because the schools, despite the law, will not permit pregnant or parenting girls in school. So it's this cycle that's happening there. We did some research with UNICEF in Senegal, where we saw the rates of child marriage have been decreasing pretty significantly over the past 10, 15 years. We wanted to understand why that was happening. What we found is that the age of first sex was staying the same, but the age of marriage is increasing. And there is no new information or access to services for these girls who are now having sex outside of marriage and becoming pregnant and may not be marrying, because what was happening over the past 10, 15 years to reduce the rates of child marriage is men are migrating to urban communities for work. So they have girlfriends at home. They get pregnant because they have no access to comprehensive sex education or youth-friendly health services. They leave the girls in the communities who are now pregnant and unmarried, and the communities stigmatize these girls. So very different contexts and very situations that require, in many cases, different, but in many cases the same interventions, right? Comprehensive sexuality education, youth-friendly reproductive health services, access to family planning for young people before marriage can help to prevent child marriage. So that's some of what we've been finding. I talked last year at this event about the impact study that was funded by USAID, where we looked at the impact of a conditional cash transfer on the age of marriage in Haryana, India. We've continued to do more research on that, but the bottom line there was that the government providing a bond in the mid-1990s to parents of daughters who were born at that time on the condition that the girl remain unmarried when she turns 18, and the girls were just turning 18, so we were able to find out what happened. That bond did not necessarily work. Why? Because a simple cash payment is not going to overturn patriarchal values in the community. There was no corresponding intervention to look at the social norms, to look at the value of the girl, to provide girls with alternatives to marriage. It was this belief that the silver bullet solution, the cash payment, would simply solve this deeply entrenched problem, and it didn't work. So those are some of the new findings that we've had. I have to note, because I know a lot of people in this room have been eager for the results of a study that we're currently conducting with the World Bank on the economic impacts of child marriage. And there we're trying to build a deeply rigorous understanding of just what does child marriage cost, not just the social cost, but the economic cost, the cost to development, the cost to poverty alleviation to countries, so that we can all better help policymakers understand the need to invest in ending the practice. And I'm happy to tell you that we will be able to share results with you on December 8th from the next phase of research. It's a long study, so stay tuned. We'll be coming out with some new findings soon.